there. So welcome to another video lecture discussion for our Foundations of Special and Inclusive Education. And today, we shall be having topic 2 of Unit 1, and that concerns Loden's diversity wheel. Well, I must admit, I failed to mention about the figure with the inner circle and outer circle, which I have presented to you the previous video lecture. That, by the way, is Loden's diversity wheel. Okay, so here, as you can see on screen, I have provided a more detailed part of the diversity wheel and its dimensions particularly. So there are other labels that are shown here. Well, the inner circle could actually be called inner embedded sphere, okay? And then the outer circle is simply otherwise known as outer sphere, okay? So just a recall and just a reminder for us to reinforce the learning that you have had from the previous lecture. So again, variables or factors such as age, gender, physical ability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, and race are those that make up our inner circle or our inner embedded sphere. All right? So take note that these are variables or factors that we have no control over. Okay? So we could not alter these because by birth, as soon as we were given birth, these already have been innately a part of us, okay? So we were born with all these variables. And on the outer sphere, we have many factors such as income, religion, education, work experience, our thinking styles. Well, because thinking styles are affected by experiences, and we have various experiences. We don't share experiences or common experiences to that effect, okay? And we also have personal values. Our breeding or how we have been raised at home would actually spell the difference, all right, between and among our personal values. And so we vary. And then we have political beliefs, of course, because of our education maybe, or our knowledge, and even with several factors affecting it, we also don't share, all right, political beliefs. And of course, personal appearance, definitely we vary. We are unique with how we appear, okay, with how we look, with how our faces have been knitted or have been created. And of course, we also have mental status, all right? So these, in all, are what make up the outer sphere, all right? So very importantly, you have to put all these in mind and to remember that these are the dimensions of diversity according to Loden, okay? So we move forward with an activity, but since we're not in a classroom, I want to reconstruct the activity and ask you to do this at least in mind, all right? Because you can't see your classmates right now, so that's the limitation of this, though it was initially created as this way, all right? So it should be looking into how diverse a classroom is, probably your classroom, to be specific, your class, all right? So you should be preparing a paper, all right, that looks like this, which has rather two sections, the primary one and then the secondary one. These two columns would just definitely mark or record or list, okay, information which are actually about you, okay? And here, the first column is actually your information, all right? The information that constitute your inner circle, okay, or your inner embedded sphere, okay? And then the secondary information would be your outer circle or your outer sphere, okay? Information about your outer sphere, okay? So you just simply have to imagine, okay? Let's say, for example, you and the closest friend or the closest classmate that you have had in the previous classes, or maybe that classmate of yours is still a classmate until now. So you just try to imagine, all right? So what could be your age right now? What could be your, how do you call this, religion in the secondary sphere or in the outer sphere? Things like that, okay? And then just try to imagine. You just try to compose all those constructs in mind, all right? And then in here, you'll get to see, well, yeah, again, we cannot do this because it really will be limiting, okay, the need for classroom space. Okay, so yeah, well, how do you find the activity? You don't necessarily have to reach 5 classmates, at least one classmate in imagination. And you try to ask the question whether you share the same characteristics. Okay, is there in any way that you share characteristics? Perhaps, okay? Perhaps there would be like a characteristic or two that you share, but definitely you vary in many aspects of it, okay? So age, perhaps you share the same age, but definitely when you count days, okay, you were born on September and then the other one is on October, on the same year, okay? You may share generally the same age right now, but there would be a difference when it comes to the number of days as to the gap, okay? So things like that. And that boils down to saying that no, we don't necessarily share absolute characteristics. I mean, similarly, totally similar characteristics, okay? So what do you do after finding out that you are different from each other? Okay, so that you have to think about again. So what does that leave you? How is that leaving you an impression? Knowing that even the closest friend you attach yourself to in the classroom or yeah, among your classmates could be a little different or in fact variedly unique from you. Okay, so what does that leave to you as an impression? Okay, you don't necessarily have to share. You can actually share that later on in your insights. Okay, you can add that to your realization. Okay, so we move on to the 4 important principles under Loden's diversity wheel. So we have here, as you can see, respect, inclusion, cooperation, and responsibility. We'll see how come that these 4 are the principles that make up the diversity wheel, okay, or even the principles that are hidden beneath or beyond the diversity wheel. You know, because it does not start with us knowing the inner sphere and the outer sphere and that's it. No. Well, there are implications or even impressions that the diversity wheel of Loden want us to understand deeper. And these are encapsulated in the 4 principles that we shall be discussing each as we go through, all right? So first, as you can see, is respect, okay? So I'm sure with your age and with the maturity that you have now, you definitely already have a preconceived, okay, definition or belief when it comes to respect. But in terms of Loden's perspective, it is actually treating others the way they wish to be treated. So it is kind of you get what you give, okay? So let's say, for example, on a biblical phase, all right? So what you sow is what you reap. Definitely, the kind of seed that you plant will definitely bear the fruit of that specific kind of seed. Okay, so respect, therefore, is doing, okay, what you desire to be treated back if the other person will already treat you. Okay, so if you wanted, therefore, kindness to be given to you or to be addressed to you, you definitely have to be kind towards the other person. Okay, so that's respect. You treat others the way you want to be treated. It's kind of good karma in thought. Okay, the golden rule. Okay, don't forget about that. It's similar, or it's a good reminder that we see respect in the light of good karma, or the golden rule. All right, so that is respect. Now we have the next, that's inclusion. Okay, what about inclusion? Inclusion is making certain that everyone on the team is a truly part of the team's decision-making process. So let's say, for example, you are grouped, okay, regardless of your abilities, regardless of your intelligence, regardless of your beliefs. Okay, well, most of the time we have random groupings done or even called for by your teachers in classrooms or even in virtual classrooms. Okay, so how is inclusion possible regardless of the diversity that is within and among you in the circle? Well, it is actually kind of welcoming, okay, the opinion of others during a part where you need to decide on something. So let's say, for example, you're working on a project, and of course, given the criteria or the rubrics from the teacher, you definitely have to decide the best that could possibly meet the standards set forth. So how would you be able to realize inclusion, or how will you be inclusive by nature given your differences in the group? Okay, you can start by doing this. You can ask suggestions from each of your group mates. Okay, and then later on, after you have solicited each one's opinion, you can actually brainstorm on which could possibly be realized when you work on it already, which is easy to do, which is friendly among all your group mates, and then later on, which is possible to give you a high remark or a high record if you consider the suggestion. All right, so that is actually inclusive by nature. You make everyone feel that his thought or his opinion matters. Okay, even if at the end of the day you might not you might not consider the decision, at least you have made everyone tell or express what is in their mind. Okay, so that is inclusion in terms of the diversity wheel of Loden, the principle behind it. Okay, the decision making would usually start first with welcoming opinions or ideas from others, and then eventually that's the time you have to gather in group again and then brainstorm which could possibly meet best, all right, the criteria set by your teacher. That's decision making. All right, so that's inclusion, and that's the second principle. Now we're down on the third, and that's cooperation. You remember during the previous lecture discussion or video lecture, cooperation, collaboration, and communication were actually three important aspects, okay, made mention towards the last part of the video lecture. Okay, so what is cooperation within the terms of Loden? So it is actively helping others succeed, okay, rather than competing or attempting to one-up someone. Okay, so look at that. It is actually having that desire to assist someone, okay, to also make a milestone or to also move forward, let's say in an activity or perhaps in his or her academic standing, okay, rather than, so look at this, competition is actually out, all right, or off in the bounds of cooperation. So we disregard here competition, but instead the help and the assistance is are more important values or virtues that one can offer. Okay, so or it could be like a deviation from attempting to one-up someone or to overcome someone, or you guys taking advantage of someone. This is not the picture of cooperation. Instead, it's simply, all right, the active help that one can offer towards someone in order for that someone to succeed. Okay, so here, what is innate of the person, therefore, is the desire to help. Okay, regardless of anything perhaps that you think in return, it's solely and initially the desire to offer someone assistance or guidance in order that he can move, okay, or that he can succeed towards an activity or towards a task. All right, so that's cooperation. Well, I don't know, but in the academic atmosphere right now, especially, I'm sorry, but most of the generation now would, how do you call this? Sometimes underestimate competition. Well, healthy competition is encouraged, you know, because sometimes this is what makes others feel accountable and responsible of their performance. You know, if especially if everyone in the classroom does his or her part or role, then someone is also being encouraged or how do you call this, pushed, okay, to do his or her part. Otherwise, he might be left out of the classroom or be left how do you call this, as if a different person in the classroom. But it has been observed that competition, though it's not always a negative impression, that many students already disregard its essence. Okay, it can actually be helpful depending on how it is working in the classroom. Okay, it is healthy if it's academic. All right, but the cooperation here would tend to brief us that it is more of actively helping others succeed, but definitely not. It's not what you think. All right, it's not what many students think, that because of friendship, because of being so close to the person, because of pity, that we do this. No, it should actually be just the sense of actively helping, okay, but not tolerating that you are already the person doing on behalf of the other person. Otherwise, that's no longer a help, but it's actually teaching the other person to become lazy. Okay, so I hope you do away with the thought that cooperation is in sense like this, because it's definitely a no-no. Okay, so that's cooperation according to Loden. Now we have the last principle, and that is responsibility. All right, very importantly, this is concerning how you manage personal behavior. All right, look at that. Managing personal behavior, and personal means your own behavior. Okay, what does this do in effect? All right, when you manage personally your behavior, you are able to maintain a diversity positive environment and questioning inappropriate behavior when it occurs. Okay, so let's say, for example, if you live by how do you call this, behavior that you think, okay, is socially accepted and is within the norms and is actually not unlawful, then you are actually maintaining, all right, you are actually adding in to an environment that is diverse positive. Okay, and then later on, you also have the right, okay, to ask or to question someone who is already exhibiting an inappropriate behavior. So let's say, for example, because you are first responsible, okay, this is the idea, huh? It starts in the self, okay? If you are able to set that testimony, okay, that you carry a diverse positive attitude already because you manage to behave accordingly and properly, then you all have the right to later on question someone if he already is misbehaving, okay? Because first, you started it with yourself. Well, you do not have the right to do that if you're not able to establish that personal behavior first. So the responsibility to check others starts by first developing it and living it as a testimony in yourself. So that's responsibility. We are only able to establish a diverse positive environment if we live by, okay, the behavior that is appropriate, and then later on we are able to check others. Okay, So that's the beauty of responsibility within the terms of Loden. And here we are down to some conclusions. So look at that. By using the diversity wheel, we can consider how different aspects, say for example, spiritual belief and cultural differences may form other people's identities and perspectives in the world. You know, knowing all these should give you and each one, okay, and each one of us, of course, an open and a more accepting stance on a variety of opinions and differences in behavior. Look at that. That's the beauty of the diversity wheel. That is the reason why there are the 4 principles. Like I said, it does not start with the listing of the variables in the inner sphere and the outer sphere alone. No, but it actually would elicit us different realizations and different impressions we have to consider as we live with different kinds of people in the society. All right. And another point here is that the attitude a person therefore take, all right, is one of tolerance and cooperation in coming together to work for a common goal or objective. All right. You see, because the kind of world we live in will be determined by the efforts we make. Okay, look at that. It is actually by our concerted efforts to bridge diversity and come together and contribute what each can for the betterment of the world. Okay, this is responsibility in itself. If you go back to the 4th principle, we can't correct stigma, or we can't correct how do you call this, in misinterpretations when it comes to our society or to our environment if we don't start first by the effort of establishing the responsibility within ourselves. Only then can we contribute if we are able to start in ourselves, okay, to be in a diverse, free, and in a diverse how do you call this, respective community if we are able to start right in ourselves. Okay, so that's a beautiful thing to consider. And that's definitely the end of today's lecture. I hope that you guys have had some things to remember as you are going through, as you are going to come up again with your insights and with your learning. So that's it. Goodbye and God bless you.